Hey, what's going on, guys? You downloaded a brand new episode of Speaking Wrestling with Elvis Arroyo, and this is Elvis Arroyo, and this is episode 37 of Speaking Wrestling. And this week, we're going to do something different, guys. It's going to be a short episode this week. We're only going to do a prediction to this weekend's NXT Takeover Chicago and Survivor Series 2019. But before we get started, guys, I want to give you guys a quick reminder. Head on over to our YouTube page, hit subscribe. Also, you can follow us on Instagram at Speaking Wrestling and over on Twitter at Speaking Wrestle. We're going to run through the predictions of NXT and Survivor Series this weekend. But like I said, guys, before we get into that, there's some other news that I want to cover about. There's some news coming from last week's episode of SmackDown, Raw, and of course, the rest of wrestling industry. And let's start with what's going on in the biggest news of professional wrestling, not WWE, although it is related to WWE, is the return of CM Punk to WWE Backstage. WWE superstar CM Punk made his return to the company, but via Fox. Yes, that's right, via Fox. He's officially signed by Fox to come on as an on-air correspondent for the show WWE Backstage, which airs on FSN1. And Punk, of course, making an impression on his very first day, and of course, dropping big old bombshells, and of course, those old pipe bombs that he's also known well. And he laid out a really big one that was intended for a Tom Arnold tweet. They have a little fun with celebrity tweets. But in this one, it seemed like he was going after Tom Arnold, but really he was going after Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins being vocal, being one of the guys in WWE right now, challenging the former WWE champion CM Punk, who hasn't even made it clear whether he's ready for in-ring action or if he's even interested in coming back for in-ring, which he's made it clear he's not. Battle between Seth Rollins and CM Punk down the line is one that I'd like to see. It's one that we've all thought would have ended up somewhere there had CM Punk not took a sabbatical and left WWE for 5 years. Should be an interesting matchup there. And also CM Punk, let it be known to the WWE universe that he is not going to hold back. He is going to be vocal and he's going to be open and very opinionated about his thoughts on WWE product. And he was already being very vocal on his very first day on the job, as him and Booker T. Page were asked, what are the thoughts on the Baron Corbin segment last week on Friday Night SmackDown? And CM Punk always being so true to himself and not going to lie on air camera. And why would he? Because he didn't agree with what he saw and quite frankly try to get the rest of his backstage correspondents, Booker T and Page, to agree with him. But I think they are very good company shills. They know who signs their checks, of course. They are signed to WWE. CM Punk not being signed to WWE. Again, he is signed through Fox. And I gotta say, guys, with having a superstar like CM Punk, who's known for dropping pipe bombs with a live microphone, definitely he's got to have some of the executives in WWE thinking, what was Fox thinking, and was this a great idea? Obviously, great idea for Fox because the ratings are in, and obviously CM Punk is a draw still 5 years later. Who would have thought? But nonetheless, WWE's definitely got to be concerned over having a guy like CM Punk, who is a cult of personality, pun intended there, who definitely has a big influence on wrestling fans out there all over the world. So his word, might be preaching to the choir. It's definitely some truth. I did not agree with that segment. I thought it was probably one of the worst segments. And really, since WWE has come to Fox, it really hasn't been impressive. I mean, you really thought that there was going to be a change. Now there's a change of song, there's a change of aesthetics, and of course the entrance, the stage to the show and all that. And of course, the talent roster got switched around with the draft. But nonetheless, this show really hasn't been impressive. And I got to agree with CM Punk on there. I don't know why Page and Booker T, again, obviously I said that they are signed to WWE, so they are not going to speak bad about the company that they work for. But CM Punk, who does not work for WWE right now, can say whatever he wants. And whether that makes WWE executives nervous, it certainly makes Fox very happy about that. But I definitely got to say that CM Punk right now is a perfect time to catch him on the show, because sooner or later, that WWE is going to put pressure on Fox executives to tone it down a little bit. So CM Punk right now is having free will on WWE's behalf to talk about their product and criticize it and be very truthful and honest. I mean, Fox is here. Fox brought him here to come and be opinionated. And CM Punk's opinion and having him on a screen is a big deal to a lot of people. It's a big deal to a lot of people that don't like CM Punk, and it's a big deal to a lot of those that still support CM Punk. I think this is a terrific move on the side of Fox to bring over CM Punk, and I think CM Punk is a great fit for this. I think, yes, he's a little bit uncandid, a little bit unorthodox, definitely a little bit unpredictable. I mean, the guy's been away for 5 years, and this is really the first time that he's being able to express himself other than that Colt Cabana podcast, but that ended up in lawsuits. Now he has free will to say what he wants because Fox is paying him to do so. So he's going to speak just like we do on this podcast here. Other big news in wrestling, Jim Cornette had to resign this week from NWA Power. It was put on a statement by Power and Billy Corgan and Dave Lagana that Jim Cornette is resigning from NWA. Due to some commentary in this week's episode, he made a remark that was uncanny and untasteful, definitely for the times that we are living in here. Not for me. I mean, come on. I get Jim Cornette. I know where he's coming from. People like him don't offend me by just hearing his voice or just the sight of him. I mean, some people are appalled, that Jim Cornette has to do anything with NWA, and they haven't watched it since. But nonetheless, Jim Cornette is no longer with NWA. I don't know where he's going to end up, but I really wish him well. I mean, he gets a lot of flack for being very opinionated, being very vocal about the current product and certain wrestlers. But Jim Cornette is one of the greatest minds in professional wrestling. And if you don't see that, you don't understand that. Look, I'm not one to judge on what a wrestling fan is, but if you don't understand Jim Cornette, then you really are missing out on who Jim Cornette was and what he means to this business. Jim Cornette resigns from NWA Power. Look forward to see where he ends up. Impact's open, or he can always go back to MLW there. And also this weekend, following Survivor Series, Stone Cold Sessions. It's a new WWE Network show featuring Stone Cold Steve Austin interviewing WWE's top superstars and legends from today and the past. It's just pretty much a rebooted version of the Stone Cold podcast on the WWE Network. And this week, he's going to sit down in what has been the most long-awaited interview for Steve to ever do, and he's going to sit down with the Deadman himself, The Undertaker, in what is a long interview. Look forward to that one. I'm looking forward to it because I remember, I believe it was the episode or maybe a week after WrestleMania 30, Stone Cold on his podcast did mention that when catching up in New Orleans with The Undertaker, he talked about getting him on the podcast, and Taker agreed to do it. And he said, just get me on there. And so he did say way back, like it's, 5 years ago, Austin did say on his podcast that, pretty soon he's going to be having The Undertaker come on his podcast and do a long interview. That never happened. I waited every single week thinking, one day I'm going to look down on my phone and there's going to be, Austin, Undertaker today. And, I've been waiting. We're finally going to get it. It's in a WWE setting, so it's probably going to be very, controlled and watched over. And definitely the questions and the narratives that they're going to want to ask are already in place. If this was more of Austin and Taker, doing this podcast down in 316 Gimmick Street out in Los Angeles, I think it would have been a much better podcast. But I still look forward to it because these are two of my favorites, two of the guys that I grew up in the business, Undertaker and Austin. For them to just sit down in a room face to face and just chat it up, and for us all to just be a fly on the wall and listen to that, it's going to be amazing. So I look forward to that. Those are the big news coming out of wrestling. Other than that, this past weekend's episodes of SmackDown, Raw, and NXT, pretty much you can just throw into one big show as we head into Survivor Series. And along with AEW this week, it's a good show. Some, I think there's a lot of progress being made right now following a Full Gear. I think now they're really starting to settle in. The women's division is still struggling. It seems the only wrestler that they really care about is Dr. Britt Baker, and she isn't even that good. I mean, I've made it very clear on this podcast, she didn't even made it out of the Performance Center, and she's being billed as the face of the women's division for AEW. I mean, that says it all right there. But other than that, a hell of a great match this week from Darby Allin and Jon Moxley in the main event of AEW Dynamite. And again, this week they did not go with saving this match to the last 8 minutes and then clearly rushing through this. They got a good 20 minutes to do the intro and then a 15-minute match. They went about 12 minutes in this. Good stuff from both of them. Moxley picks up the win with a paradigm shift off the second rope. But Darby Allin, I mean, this guy's a star. I keep saying it every single week whenever I talk about Darby Allin. He is the most underrated star in that company. And I hope, that they're aware of that, because when they spend so much time giving airtime to the Young Bucks, to Omega, to Cody, they really need to be paying more attention to a guy like Darby Allin and also a guy like Adam Page. Yes, he's part of the elite, but I think those are the guys that are going to give you the best wrestling matches on the show. Yes, those other guys are entertaining and they have storylines that keep you enticed to the program, but ultimately, it's just like, Bruce and everybody else says it. It's like, then the bell rings, and that's where the product lies. It's what's in the ring. And a match like Moxley and Allin to close out that show last night was another good example of why your matchups inside the ring are where it counts. So kudos to them for, again, not messing up the time cues and the timing of the show. The show went off without a hitch. So I think AEW is, like I said, they're settling in to what's normal to them, and I think that's good for them. It wasn't a very impressive show this week. I think it was just a mediocre show. It wasn't bad for sure. I mean, there's been other weeks where I've said it's okay, but I've definitely cut into it more. This week's episode, I can't really cut into it much. I think everybody really tried. There are more matchups this week, but again, tag team matches going on way too long, especially that women's match. That was definitely a match that did not need to come off as if it was, a WrestleMania or an NXT Takeover. It's just TV. All right, guys, so let's cut to the chase and why we're all here. It's the NXT Takeover predictions. It's going to be Undisputed Era inside the War Games, taking on Tommaso Ciampa, Keith Lee, Dijakovic, and an unannounced special partner. I'm going to go with the team of the Undisputed Era on this one. I think this is their match, and I think it's one for them to gain. And definitely, I think the baby faces right now who are all involved, are big-time fan favorites. So a loss to them isn't going to hurt them. Undisputed Era losing, I think it takes away from them, especially the fact that they are all the champions. And Adam Cole recently being on TV and having great matches with Daniel Bryan and Seth Rollins, for him to just take a loss like this at an NXT level when he's been featured on the main roster and, been looked more from the main roster audience, I think Undisputed Era needs to keep shining and they need to own this match. Again, this is their third year in a row in the War Games matchup. They need to own it. They came off a loss last year. They can't do 2 losses in a row. So I'm going to go with Undisputed Era. And the women's War Games matchup, this should be an amazing matchup. The first time ever that the women are going to be inside a War Game. So kudos to them. I'm going to go with the team of Rhea Ripley. I think the heel team with Baszler, the fact that the title is not on the line and Baszler does not have to be pinned in this situation, I think Baszler could be taken out of this matchup, and especially since she has a big matchup coming up on Sunday, which we'll get into. Also, triple threat match, Killian Dane, Damian Priest, and Pete Dunne. In a triple threat match, the winner will become the new number 1 contender for the NXT Championship. I'm going to go with, Priest is great. He's a great character. Dane, they feature him a lot, but I feel like we don't get much matchups out of him. I expect him to be, a standout in this matchup, but I'm going to go with Dunne on this. I think Dunne, since dropping the UK Championship, has just been floating around, and he is someone that, you look at and how he won that tournament, and also he won the NXT UK Championship and held it for the longest reigning championship of all time. He's been floating around, and it gets me worried to think that, if these are just the years where he's going to be forgotten about and overlooked and overpassed by other talent. I mean, NXT right now, there with the 2 hours, there's more talent to go around and feature a guy like Dunn. If he's not in a spot where he's close to a championship or in a prominent storyline, he can get lost in the shuffle, and he's definitely someone you don't want lost in your shuffle. Balor and Riddle. This is a good one. Originally, Matt Riddle was supposed to be in the men's War Game matchup, but because of Balor coming back and calling him out, this is such a good deal. I'm going to go with Finn Balor on this. I don't think it's going to be a clean, decisive win, but I think Balor beating a fan favorite like Matt Riddle isn't going to hurt Matt Riddle, and it's going to do well for Finn Balor. And now let's get into WWE Survivor Series, and let's go in with the WWE Women's Triple Threat match. It's going to be Shayna Baszler taking on Bayley and Becky Lynch on this one. I'm going to go with Bayley. I think Becky and Shayna are feeling each other way too much and forgetting about Bayley, even though Bayley has made attacks on Shayna and got her comeuppance. But I'm going to go with Bayley on this one. I think she needs the win to not be forgotten about, and she's the SmackDown Women's Champion. You can't have the SmackDown Women's Champion be the third Women's Champion and be overpassed by the NXT, which, no disrespect to Shayna, she is amazing, and all three of these women are equal in my eye. But when we're talking about championships, you got to have the SmackDown Championship somewhere up there. So I'm going to go with Bayley on this one. Also, Team Raw versus Team SmackDown versus Team NXT on the men's. I also think there's going to be a women's, but it's yet to be announced. But for the men's, let's just go with teams. So many names to name off of this list. I'm going to go with the team of SmackDown. I'm going to go with SmackDown. I think it's got a lot of baby faces. I mean, you got Braun Strowman and you got Roman Reigns. So definitely want Roman Reigns being the top guy amongst all your three brands. So I'm going to go with Team SmackDown on that one. And also New Day taking on Undisputed Era, Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. Also taking on the Viking Raiders in a triple threat tag team matchup. Should be a great match. Steal the show. I'm going to go with Viking Raiders on this one. I think they are all three strong teams, but Viking Raiders definitely could use the rub off of beating the other two tag team champions in the WWE. And also AJ Styles, United States champion, Intercontinental champion, Shinsuke Nakamura, and the North American champion, Roderick Strong, in a triple threat match of the secondary championships. My goodness, this is the one match that I'm looking forward to all weekend. This one. It's got AJ, it's got Shinsuke, and it's got Strong. I mean, seriously, this is the matchup. Just sign me up. If you told me that this is just a one-show match, I'd probably just watch this. I'd be cool with it. I'm going to go with Shinsuke. I think maybe Sammy can get involved. Cesaro is tied up to Shinsuke now, but I'm gonna go with Shinsuke. I think SmackDown's just getting overlooked, man. So I'm gonna go with SmackDown on this one. Also, Bray Wyatt defends the SmackDown, the Universal Championship against Daniel Bryan. I'm gonna go with Bray on this one. I think the story there's too much to unfold for it to just be settled on Survivor Series with only really like 2 weeks of any story buildup. But I'm going to go with Bray on that one. And the main event, Brock Lesnar defends the WWE Championship against Rey Mysterio. Man, I'm going to go with Brock on this one. But I do expect this to be possibly Rey's best match and Brock's as well. I mean, I'm excited for this. I mean, I get chills thinking about it because I know that this is just going to be a great matchup. And it's two legends, two future Hall of Famers, Rey Mysterio and Brock Lesnar. I'm so happy for Rey being put in this spot because when he's been back for a year now, I just keep thinking, what are they doing with Rey? Why did they bring a legend? I mean, a fucking living legend like Rey Mysterio. They brought him back and he was just fighting, Andrade every single week. And now to be put in the spot, kudos to him. I'm looking forward to it. And I swear, if anybody out there is drinking, take a shot every time that they bring up that Rey won the championship in the Allstate Arena. And speaking of Allstate Arena, I look forward to that. Tremendous show, SmackDown this weekend. You got NXT Takeover, you got Survivor Series, and then you got Raw on Monday emanating from Allstate Arena. Should be a great weekend. And of course, because it's in Chicago, It's the hometown of CM Punk. So the big question is, will CM Punk actually be at Survivor Series this weekend? That's a big question, but we do expect those loud CM Punk chants throughout the show, maybe throughout the weekend. So I look forward to that. And now it's time for our What to Watch. I just told you what to watch. It's NXT Takeover Chicago and Survivor Series this weekend. Make it a WWE weekend and watch Raw and SmackDown as well. And MVPs and floppers of the week, guys. This is where I give you guys my MVPs and who flopped for the week. And because I decided to put in the WWE and AEW, I'm going to also include 2 MVPs and 2 floppers of the week. This week's MVPs is Daniel Bryan for his performance on SmackDown. Once again, the guy doesn't need to say much, but his facials, his body language, my God, it's just perfect. Top performer. And also on AEW, Jon Moxley. I think Moxley right now also is in a good spot. He's picking up some victories now. Picked up another victory here against Darby Allin. Good matchup also. Flopper of the week for WWE, it's Baron Corbin. I mean, that promo with the dog, it's just so ridiculous. 2 weeks in a row. You start off your show that gets promoted every single weekend on NFL games and everywhere. You start off your show like that. That's a big no-no. So big time flopper. And also AEW, look, I said my flops about AEW for the week. They're not on the floppers list, but I'm going to go with Corey Graves for agreeing on his podcast this week after the bell that the segment with Baron Corbin and that dog was great. So those are my 2 floppers of the week, and that's going to do it for episode 37 of Speaking Wrestling, guys. Thank you so much for another episode. You guys can support this podcast by going over to our YouTube page, hitting subscribe, and also you can follow us on Instagram at Speaking Wrestling and on Twitter at Speaking Wrestle, guys. Have a great weekend. We'll do it again next week. Bye-bye.